The Royals take the all-important Game 1 in Baltimore, so let's talk about it next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuning to another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I am your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, some co-hosting, and a little bit of producing as well. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Now, today's show is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Book today at Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today and go get started. Well, it's a little bit later than I had hoped to do this episode, and believe me, I am about as worn out as all of you are out there that stayed up and probably watched the rest of all the wild card games out there. But I did promise, and I wanted to stick to that promise, of doing a recap of Game 1 in the American League Wild Card Series between the Royals and the Orioles. And yes, I know that it would have been nice to do one at 6 or 7 o'clock, but as I had mentioned in the first episode this morning, I had a couple of things I had to get to right after the game, but just now getting back, and I'm able to give you guys at least a little bit of thoughts on what I had from a thrilling 1-0 victory over the Baltimore Orioles. Man, I mean, what more can you say about the performance from Cole Ragans? What more can you say about the performance of this bullpen? What more can you say about Bobby Wood Jr. coming through when you needed him most? And by the way, let me throw in an honorable mention here. How about the performance of Maikel Garcia? A guy that even myself was not confident in starting today, but he goes out there and has one of his best games in probably a month, getting on base twice, swiping 2 bags, one of them being on a delayed steal. I mean, to me, Maikel Garcia absolutely deserved at least one of the game balls. If Matt Quatrero is handing out multiple game balls, Maikel Garcia has to get one of them. But today, what was so impressive to see was that this team didn't crumble. This team, for the better part of 9 innings, never caved to the atmosphere. They never caved to the hostility. They never caved to the situation. And they came out with a 1-0 win. And there is endless praise that I would give to a lot of guys on this team. We'll start it off with Cole Ragans here. And I think what's so incredible about Cole Ragans is that this is a guy that, even going back to last year, I think there were high hopes for. I think you had the expectation that Cole Ragans would be the Royals' best pitcher in 2024. But it's a whole different thing when you go out there and do it like he did today in the postseason. I know recency bias is a thing. I know being a prisoner of the moment is a thing. Today, that was one of the best postseason starts I've ever seen from a Royals starter. I am incorporating Johnny Cueto's Game 5 start against the Astros in 2015. I am including Cueto's start against the Mets in Game 2 of the World Series. I am including Edinson Volquez in Game 1 against the Toronto Blue Jays in the ALCS. I am including Yordano Ventura in Game 6 of the 2014 World Series. There's a couple different spots I could go with there. But to me, when you are that guy that is handed over the responsibility of starting game one for a team that hasn't been in the playoffs in a long, long time, that adds another element to everything about this. Because here's what I thought today about this game. The Royals had not a lot of pressure on them. Baltimore certainly had all the pressure because of their losing streak in the postseason, because they were a team that won 100 games last year and got swept out of the playoffs. And here they were again with a 90-plus win team. It felt like they had all the pressure on their side. But from a Royals standpoint, I certainly did believe that there was some type of pressure. And I touched on this today in the morning episode, that if they went out there and got shelled, if Baltimore won 9-1, I think it would have given a lot of fans the feel, the vibe that maybe this Royals team was a lot further off from playoff contention than we really thought they would be. Now, I didn't believe that way because this rotation had been so good all season long. They had an MVP candidate in their lineup. They had a multiple-time All-Star behind the plate. They had traded for a elite back-end closer to pitch in games like this. So I thought this team was better than what maybe some people out there thought they could be. But to me, what Cole Reagans did today was show to everybody else out there that you do not want to face the Royals in a game one scenario or an elimination scenario, because they've got guys out there that can lock it down like Cole Reagans did today. Cole Reagans looked about as unhittable as he has all season long. No walks in this game. He had 8 Ks, 6 shutout innings, and the only reason he was pulled at 80 pitches was because of leg cramps, calf cramps, we'll call them. That's the only reason that he was pulled from this game. He would have gotten the 7th inning, and the Royals could have gone to Chris Bubich and Lucas Erceg to close things down. But to me, this was that type of start for Cole Reagans to go, all right, you are deserving of an extension. You have earned every right to the number one title in this rotation, but you're also not just the number one in this rotation. You are a number one in baseball. You are a number one in the American League. You are a deserving all-star. And today, he showcased that it wasn't about the 4-time All-Star and former Cy Young Award winner who went 8 innings of 1-run ball. It was about Cole Reagans, who threw 6 shutout innings on the road in front of that hostile crowd when his team needed him most. You have heard me so many times in 2024 say that this is the start of Cole Reagans' career. This is the professional test of Cole Reagans' career. Today was, of course, once again, the biggest test of Cole Reagans' career. And I sound like a broken record. I have no doubt about it. But today, as I'm sitting there at Tanner's Bar and Grill in Overland Park, I am watching this game and seeing everybody else get invested into it. And I think there was this glorious feeling of knowing that number 55 wasn't giving up anything. You had your doubts about the offense and what they could give you over the course of 9 innings. But I never had a doubt in my mind that Cole Reagans was going to keep this team in the game. He had battled around a leadoff double early in that game by Cedric Mullins. He had battled around to first and third with James McCann up and Gunnar Henderson. Struck out both of them. That's what aces do. And that's what aces do in the postseason. He is a guy that everybody out there wishes they had. He is somebody that has electric stuff. And Tarek Skubal, had shoved in Houston for Detroit. He looked phenomenal today. And Cole Reagans, who wasn't far behind him in the strikeout total for 2024, he followed it up with that type of performance. And what's more than that is Tarek Skubal had 3 runs of support. Cole Reagans didn't have anything until the final, 12 to 15 outs. He didn't have much. And to me, this is a guy that you can count on over and over and over again to give you that type of start every 5th day, but more importantly, in the postseason. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, let's talk about the job that Lucas Erceg did to get the final 4 outs in that game and that final pitch he threw, a 91-mile-an-hour changeup darting away from Heston Kjerstad. That's all coming up next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our first title sponsor today in FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, and go get started today. Now, tomorrow, it's going to be Seth Lugo and Zach Eflin going in Game 2 at Camden Yards in Baltimore. What you may be looking for to put a little bit of money down. Well, I do believe that Vinny Pasquantino is still due for a hit in this game. I sprinkled some money down on that today. It didn't work out, but I think I'm going to go for a Game 2 scenario in Vinny Pasquantino getting a hit in this game, but also looking for Seth Lugo to go pretty deep in this game. I'm going to take the over in innings pitched tomorrow against that Baltimore lineup. Feel good about his start going in tomorrow. Hopefully, that doesn't bite me in the ass. Next sponsor we're going to give a shout out to is PrizePicks. Now, with PrizePicks, it's the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks, and you can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. So go get started today over at PrizePicks and run your game. Today was, I think, a surreal moment for a lot of Royals fans, and also one that they had to basically live and die with on every single pitch. Let's all be honest here. Wherever you watched the game today, you were on the edge of your seat. Your heart was pounding. You could barely get up to go to the bathroom. You were so nervous. That's what this game was today. And I don't think it got any more intense than when Lucas Erceg came in the bottom of the 8th inning with 2 runners on, 2 outs, and a 1-run game. I don't think it gets any more exhilarating than that. And there was nothing in the regular season that could have prepared us for what that 8th inning had in store for us. And in fact, when I was watching the game, the commercials didn't even have a smooth transition. It went from a commercial straight to the first pitch of the game. It wasn't like we could lead in and see the warm-up tosses and hear the announcers, the broadcasters talk about Erceg's season. We were introduced directly to this situation coming out of the break. But I got to tip my cap to what this bullpen did. How could I not? Sam Long coming in earlier than expected. He goes 1-2-3. Chris Bubich comes in. He gets the first 2 outs of the inning. then walks Gunnar Henderson and gives up a single to Jordan Westberg. Not a hard hit, but a hit nonetheless. And then the guy that you have counted on so many times in the second half, he comes into the game with the fate of game one in his hands. Let's all clarify that right now. There was nobody else in the late stage of this game that had more in his hands than Lucas Erceg. To me, this is such a defining moment of who you are as a player and how you deal with adversity, how you deal with pressure, how you deal with the weight of a fan base on your shoulders. Let's be honest. Everybody, wherever you're watching the game, a bar, your home, your buddy's house, you're putting your livelihood, your feelings for the rest of the day on the back of Lucas Erceg. And he gets Anthony Santander to roll in to a fielder's choice to end that inning. Now he rolls it over to Bobby Witt Jr., who makes a smooth, a clean play, and you go into the ninth inning. And then in that ninth inning, he leads off the frame with a walk to Ryan O'Hearn. Of course, it's a former Royal. You're not feeling the best in that moment. It was a borderline call, 99, right on the inside corner, and yet it's called a ball. A pitch that for the most part of the day was called a strike, but in this scenario, it's called a ball. And I know everybody at the bar that I was at felt like this is the moment. Here comes the double down the line to tie the game. Here comes the double off the wall. Here comes the walk to lead into the gapper that wins the game. And it's not that you didn't have hope. It's not that you didn't have a feeling of confidence with Lucas Erceg. It's for the simple fact that for 8 innings of this game, you were constantly worrying about, well, when is that big outbreak for Baltimore going to happen? Is it going to happen at some point off Cole Reagans? Is it going to happen off some point against Sam Long? Is it going to happen off some point against Chris Bubich? And it almost did a handful of times. But it was Lucas Erceg responding to that leadoff walk with a strikeout, a pop-out, and then throwing, I would go as far to say, one of the most unhittable changeups I've ever seen. And I know that for the most part, I'm watching a lot more Royals baseball than the rest of Major League Baseball. You go back and look, whether it be Pitching Ninja or you're just rewatching the game, go back and look at that final pitch of the game. And you tell me how Heston Kjerstad is supposed to hit that, or foul it off, or spit on it. Because to me, that pitch looks like it's going to hit the bottom right corner of the zone and then runs away into the right-hander's batter's box. It just completely darts. That 91-mile-an-hour changeup that had 19 inches of run, by the way, just ran away from Heston Kjerstad. I don't fault him one bit for swinging at that. I don't fault him one bit for not being able to make contact on that, because there are very few hitters that would be able to identify that pitch and spit on it with 2 strikes. And even if you didn't spit on it, be able to make contact. A 91-mile-an-hour changeup is out of this world. There are few guys, I think, in my opinion, that could honestly locate it in that type of spot with that type of run with the game on the line. And that's why you got to praise the job that Lucas Erceg has done. And he's going to be here for a handful of more years. This is a type of arm that you can count on, that you can put into a situation like that, and he's got the stuff to work out of it. For so long in the first half, Royals fans begged for that swing and miss stuff, to trust a guy to get out of a leadoff walk jam or a first and second jam like he did twice today, I might add. He is electric, and Royals fans should feel very fortunate that he's going to be here not just for this postseason run that hopefully can go longer than just tomorrow and the day after, but I'm talking years down the road. What a story for Lucas Erceg, and how great was he today in the Game 1 win against Baltimore, 1-0 in Camden Yards. We'll take our final break of the show. When we come back, let's preview tomorrow's game. It's going to be Seth Lugo versus Zach Eflin. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our final sponsor today in Booking.com. Explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about, with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay even in your rival city during the postseason. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball's competition stadium cuisine. Luckily on Booking.com, you can find the stadium stay that's right just for you. With Booking.com's wide variety of choice across the U.S., you can go incognito to all of your baseball rivals' cities. So what you can do is go to Booking.com, Booking.yeah, and find your best stay, because the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. So book today at Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Tomorrow's going to be the decider, in my opinion. That seems like I might be jumping the gun a little bit here, but to me, this feels like a spot where if you let the Orioles go in and really, dominate you, take a 6-1 win, take an 8-1 win, you are going to find yourself in a spot in Game 3 that feels very undesirable. Because even as good as Game 1 felt, it is one game. You are in a very advantageous spot. Nobody can take that from you. You are in a very advantageous spot. You shut out a good lineup. You silenced a sold-out and hostile crowd. But tomorrow can flip everything on its head. And that's the part about feeling extraordinarily focused in a series like this. Because to me, Kansas City, as we stated in either this morning's podcast or yesterday's, I'll tell you, I am completely worn out. I am exhausted. So I can't remember if it was today's podcast or it was yesterday's. But this is a team that's playing with house money. The Royals showed today they're playing with house money. They played today like they were loose, they were free, they didn't have the pressure like Baltimore did, and it resulted in a win. At least the bullpen looked like that, and the defense, with the exception of MJ Melendez and his gaffe in left field, everybody else played very free and easy. But tomorrow is a big indicator about what this series can be. Now, that sounds kind of stupid to say. Let's all be honest here. I've said a lot of stupid things before, and I think that I've had a lot of stupid points before. But tomorrow, I think, is a huge indicator of this series because, one, yeah, if the Royals do what they did yesterday, they're on to playing the Yankees. And I've gotten a couple questions about, well, doesn't that mean if the Tigers win, they will go to play Cleveland because of the lower seed? No, the Royals are going to play the Yankees regardless of what happens. So unless I'm missing some rule, I've seen the schedule posted by all the national MLB reporters, and the Royals are going on to play the Yankees if they win this series. And Game 1, I think, would be on Saturday night in the Bronx against the number 1 seed in the American League playoff picture. But to me, why this means so much is because if you go out there and get shelled tomorrow, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, I'm just saying in baseball, it's always a possibility. You go out there and get your ass kicked. It really puts Baltimore in the driver's seat for Game 3. And it's not to say that if the Royals go out there and play Baltimore close, they will be the favorable team or in the driver's seat for Game 3. But I think there's a couple different ways at how you can look at this. The best remaining Orioles starters throwing tomorrow Zach Eflin going tomorrow for Baltimore has the weight of their season on his shoulders. He's got everything riding on this start tomorrow. Seth Lugo certainly has a lot riding on him, but he's got a little bit of a cushion here. Because if Seth Lugo doesn't pitch well, and Seth Lugo gets knocked around a little bit, let's say, for example, that start he had against Boston in Fenway, right? If he has a start like that and the Royals lose, 5-2 tomorrow, it's not good, right? Because then you're going into Thursday in an elimination game. It's do or die at that point. It is a true wild card elimination game. But Zach Eflin can't have a start like that. If Zach Eflin doesn't pitch well tomorrow, their season's done. Baltimore would have been swept for the second consecutive season with back-to-back wins of over 90 wins. That's what's on the line tomorrow for Baltimore. And it's a lot of pressure. But it also doesn't mean that Kansas City is in a great, glorious spot. I mean, you feel good about where they're at. It's a 1-0 game. I'm not going to be negative about that whatsoever. But to me, tomorrow, I think in the first 5 innings is going to show us a lot about where these teams are at. If the Royals lead after 5 innings, it'll show you that Baltimore is far more tense than what we think they can be. If the Baltimore Orioles are up by 4 runs tomorrow by the end of the 5th inning, you will have that feeling that they know just how desperate this situation is, just how dire this situation is. And to me, I think we're going to see a far more desperate Baltimore team tomorrow. Now, it matters what Seth Lugo looks like and what type of game that he's on. But if Seth Lugo has his A game and the offense can scratch across a couple against Zach Eflin, and you look up there after 5 innings and the Royals have a 2 to 3 run lead, you are going to see a team that looks very, very tight because they know they're down to their last couple of outs. But the Royals right now, as I just said with Baltimore, if they win tomorrow in dramatic fashion, they're in the driver's seat. But right now, as I'm recording this podcast, the Royals are the ones that are in the driver's seat. They are 1 win away. They got the Baltimore Orioles on the ropes in the wild card series, but that doesn't mean it's over. There's still 1 game to go here and potentially a 3rd game to decide who goes on to play the New York Yankees in the American League Divisional Series. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson, and you can always find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every aspect of the playoff picture. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we're not going to have another 2 episodes a day because I am completely worn out, but we will probably have one after Game 2 tomorrow, win or lose, to break down that game and hopefully preview an ALDS matchup with the New York Yankees. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.